Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Michelle Wills, and today's date is Friday, the 10th day of April 2026, and this is part 2 of a video I posted yesterday concerning sanctuary housing, my landlord of Marybone House, Liverpool. There we go. A letter I received dated the 1st of April 2026, which I received on the day after the bank holiday, Easter bank holiday Monday. So just to recap, part 1 of the video, I talked about this letter, which I have in front of me, about an incident that happened on the 27th of March, which I couldn't say much about because there's an ongoing police investigation. I made a complaint to Devon and Cornwall Police, so I can't say any more than that. And I went through the lies that sanctuary staff in Pacific, the housing officer, has repeatedly told Emma Bowden, her name, over many years. So that was in part 1. I then went on to tell an example of drug dealing of a individual at Charlton House who was a drug dealer, and I told his story about the antics he got up to and how I left it after talking about the sad death of a lovely woman. I didn't obviously won't give her name, who sadly committed suicide around 2017-ish through hanging. So I'll take it up from there. So following that incident, the tragic death of this poor young woman, life continued. The drug dealing continued at Charlton House, and at some point a woman became a tenant in a different flat at Charlton House. I'm going to call this woman Katie. That's obviously not her real name, Katie. Katie was an alcoholic and also a drug addict. So Katie, I don't know how Katie knew the drug dealer, Mr. A, but they became an item, boyfriend, girlfriend. So Katie never, to my knowledge, lived with the drug addict or the drug dealer, Mr. A. They were, however, boyfriend, girlfriend, but she had her own one-bedroom flat. Mr. A had his own one-bedroom flat on a different floor at Charlton House. So Mr. A is now continuing, following the death of girlfriend number 2, continuing to deal his drugs. And it just goes on and on. The police are contacted, not by me, because by this time I'd given up, what's the point? Contacted by other residents, being woken up early hours of morning, loud shouting, people smashing the front door to smithereens, general total antisocial behaviour. That was going on, that the police couldn't give a damn about, and sanctuary housing couldn't give a damn about. And then I talked about the events leading up to the arrest, trial and conviction of Mr. A, the drug addict, and about how in November of 2023, he was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment for drug dealing, basically. I also talked about how during that time, when he was incarcerated, graffiti was written at the top of the first flight of stairs. So that's a communal stairway between the ground floor and the first floor. And it was by his girlfriend, and it said the drug addict's name, the number 4, the word me, then the number 4, and then the word ever. So X for me forever, it said. So Mr. A, while serving his sentence, had a dog, a lovely dog, and so Katie decided to look after a dog. No one else would. So Katie looked after a dog during his imprisonment for 10 months. So we're now looking at 2024, the end of 2024. So Mr. A has been released from police custody and he's returned to Charlton House. Obviously, his flat has been rented out to somebody else. His tenancy terminated. Obviously, 10 months imprisonment means no rent paid, no anything. So I know the housing officer, Emma Bowden, did tell me that she contacted Mr. A by video link, I believe, whilst he was in prison, and he agreed to voluntarily give in the 4 weeks required notice on his flat, rather than Sanctuary having to go through the laborious task of going through court to get a repossession order on the flat. So that's what the housing officer told me. So he's back now living as the lodger of his girlfriend for a period of time. Christmas came. I went away just for 3 or 4 days for Christmas, and then came back around the 28th of December, and the New Year, saw the New Year and everything. And then towards the end, I'm going to say around the 5th or 6th of January, I left my flat and I went to stay with some friends of mine for a couple of weeks in Brighton. And I returned towards the end of January, and the following day, following my return towards the end of January, I bumped into one of my neighbours, the same guy who built the shed and caused all that mess, the patio guy, Barry. And he said something to me which was rather peculiar. And he said to me, the funeral's on Thursday. And I said, whose funeral? And he said to me, obviously it's not her own name, but Katie's. I said, what? Katie's dead? I'm shocked. Katie, she was a nice lady, She was a drug addict, she was an alcoholic, but that doesn't mean we're not nice people when sober. They just, have a awful addiction. And yeah, he explained that one evening, so this is why I was away, Natalie and Mr. A went to bed together. They lived together. Don't forget, he's now the lodger. And whenever it was, don't know the nitty-gritty, the details, When he awoke, Mr. A awoke in bed with Katie. Katie was unresponsive. So I don't know the much details, but I imagine the police record or the ambulance service record because she was in bed unresponsive. And unfortunately, Katie presumably had died in her sleep. I estimate Katie probably to be aged between 30 and 40. As to dates, I'm unsure of a coroner's inquest of a cause of death. It could be drug related. I imagine it is, but again, that's just my own speculation. But when you're, between 40 and 50, and bearing in mind, two people have already died at the hands, two girlfriends have died. We now have 3 current girlfriends of Mr. A, the drug dealer, dead. So you would think that following this awful tragedy, that Sanctuary would have, taken back her flat, and obviously found new tenants, but that wasn't the case. Unbelievably, in, I believe it was the end of January, beginning of February, Sanctuary Housing gave the outright tenancy to Mr. A. Unbelievable, isn't it? So just pause for a moment and think about this. So Mr. A, who sometime prior to 2008 was evicted from Charlton House, from his flat number, I won't say the flat number, I do know the flat number, but I won't say it. From his flat, his 1-bedroom flat at Charlton House, he was evicted through either drug dealing, as the gossipers say, or, as he told me himself, for non-payment of rent. He's evicted. So, he told me that himself, as I say. One of those 2 stories is probably true. He then comes back as the lodger, around 2010-ish, of his girlfriend. She then is found dead of a drugs overdose in bed in her flat that she shared with her lodger, Mr. A. And then he's allowed to keep the outright tenancy. He's given a tenancy, having already been just 2, 3, 4, 5 years prior, been evicted for whatever reason. He's allowed back and allowed to take over the tenancy. Then he goes to prison for drug dealing, sentenced to 3 years. And then when he comes out, he's allowed to become the lodger of his new girlfriend number 3, who subsequently, that was in the beginning of September 2024. Then, following her death, unknown reasons, I have to say, but it's not normal. She may have had, I don't know, a heart condition. It could have been, a million different things. I'm not going to speculate what she died of. But it seems more than a coincidence that you've got a drug dealer, lodger, living with a drug addict and an alcoholic, and 2 people already dead, and now she's dead. So, to me, it's not rocket science, but again, it's speculation. So, that's 3 girlfriends, 3 women dead. So what do Sanctuary Housing do? What Sanctuary Housing then offer Mr. A the tenancy of his deceased girlfriend's flat, which obviously he accepts. And as I'm making this video, he has his third tenancy at Charlton House, having been kicked out for non-payment of rent or drugs, having been given up his tenancy whilst in prison, a 3-year sentence for dealing drugs. He's now back again at Charlton House. Yes, you guessed it, dealing drugs. You couldn't make it up. You really couldn't make it up. And people I've spoken to, especially the police, they're astonished, they're astounded. Why he's here, because the drug dealing, you're seeing people coming around, people outside, if thankfully the door has been fixed, it has a lock, and if people are trying to, I guess I'm not a drug addict, so I don't know, I'm not an alcoholic, I can't stand drugs or alcohol, but I guess you've got desperate people needing their fix. They're coming around and they are making a noise, shouting, Mr. A, open the effing door, and stuff like that, It's commonplace. It happens probably at least once a week. People coming around, because they can't gain entrance. They got no response from the comm system. In all likelihood, Mr. A's probably out. I don't know where he is. But you're sat in your lounge, and then quite often, probably at least twice a week, I have to, if I'm watching a film, if I'm on my laptop, if I'm watching the television, whatever I'm doing, sometimes I'll have to do it through headphones because of the noise, the banging, the shouting, the swearing. That's not all down to Mr. A, obviously. It's other residents with their own issues, But to be honest, it's not a nice place to live. It's Charlton House, and so that just shows the what sanctuary residents, what sanctuary housing think about their residents, their tenants. They couldn't give a damn. All it's interested in is money and lies. I'm struggling for words to describe how I feel. But I guess there was a Dispatches, Channel 4 Dispatches programme. For those of you who don't know what Dispatches programme is about, it's very similar to BBC Panorama. It's, I believe, a half an hour show. I never watched it apart from this one episode, which I'm going to tell you about now. But it's about, like Panorama, they'll investigate. And this particular edition, I believe, broadcast in March of 2019. And it was called New Landlords from Hell. And the whole half-hour episode was about sanctuary housing and the shocking way they treat their tenants. They are, it's quite accurate in the description. Sanctuary truly are the landlords from hell. They don't give a damn, as this letter I received proves, the lies they tell, and it just goes on and on. I will give you a couple of other incidents to show that sanctuary, in my opinion, are not fit to be social housing landlords, to be any sort of landlords. And it was on moving in. My tenancy agreement was signed on the 8th of May 2008. I was here I brought a friend along with me, and I had my dog. I had a dog for about 18 months. The dog was 2 years old, a golden Labrador, and we met the sanctuary representative, a gentleman by the name of Kai Heap. That was his name. We met in the kitchen, and obviously, it was to sign the tenancy agreement. I had previously visited the flat and seen the flat, and I accepted the flat. Probably one of the biggest mistakes in my life. So, before I signed the tenancy agreement, we went through the different pages. My responsibilities as a tenant and their responsibilities as a landlord. And one of the things Mr. Heap said was that Sanctuary have a policy of not allowing pets, so no dogs or cats, in blocks of flats. If you've got a garden, it's fine. And this being a block of flats, then if I signed a tenancy agreement, then I couldn't bring my dog along with me. So, those of you who love animals, who have a dog or a cat, know how heartbreaking it is, how emotional it is when you lose that dog through whatever reason, through death, or it is literally like losing a member of your family. It really is. It's heartbreaking. So I had to give my dog away in order to become a tenant at Charlton House. The other option was homelessness, because the previous flat I was in, I was given notice, Section 21 I think it's called, Section 21 notice, no fault eviction, and because obviously I registered with the council as being homeless through no fault of my own, I was put into temporary accommodation, and what the council told me was that if I didn't accept this flat, then I'm on my own, because their responsibility was to house me, assist me in finding somewhere to live, and they had done their part, which I understand, I agree, so it was not ideal, it's far from ideal, but I had no choice. It was that or me and my dog being homeless. So within days of moving in, I discovered that at least 9 of the 30 flats at Charlton House had dogs, or multiple dogs. So to say I was pissed off is a massive understatement, having to give up my dog. So I told Sanctuary about this, and Sanctuary told me to write to request permission to keep a dog. So that is what I did. And at the time, I was going through some mental health issues, and I even had a letter of support which I sent with my letter requesting permission to keep a dog, a recommendation from a consultant psychiatrist saying that having a dog would be therapeutic for me and would aid my recovery from my mental health issues. I remember the date very well. I received a letter. I'm not sure when I received the letter, but the letter was dated 8th of August 2008, and it's from an area manager by the name of Janet Swales. Yes, Janet Swales. And despite what the supporting evidence I had from a psychiatrist, she denied me permission to keep a dog. Indeed, in her letter, it's a shame I don't have a letter. I mean, it's 2008. It was 18 years ago. I don't have a letter, obviously. But in her letter, she did say that were I to get a dog, then my tenants will be at risk because I'll be in breach of tenancy. Yeah, so as of today, 14 of the 30 flats have dogs. So therefore, Sanctuary are breaking their own tenancy agreement, their obligations under the tenancy agreement. Discrimination, blatant discrimination. Another example is on the signing of a tenancy, the 8th of May 2008, the flats had no electricity. Kai Heap gave me a electric key because all flats at Charlton House have a key meter. So with this key meter, obviously, when he had left, Kai Heap had left, my friend had left, I was in the flat alone with my dog, and I had no electricity. So what I did was I went probably 5 minutes walk to the nearest pay point, the local co-op in Dawlish, and I topped up £10 on my key. I came home, put the £10 credit in, nothing, no electricity. I then rang the landlord, Sanctuary Housing, and they said, not our problem. You need to contact the electric company. Obviously, I didn't know who the electric company were, and they said it was Southern Electric. Southern Electric. I contacted Southern Electric, and they told me, yeah, you guessed it, not our problem. You need to contact your landlord. So, obviously, the most important thing was not to sort out this mess, but was to get electricity. So I then had to go down a second time to the co-op, put a further £10 on the meter. I'd come back, having spent £20, put the key in the meter, still nothing. I then had to make a third visit to the co-op and put on yet another £10 worth of credit. And this time came back, put the key in, and I actually got some credit. It actually worked. So 3 trips, 3 £10 top-ups. So it cost me £30 to get some electricity in my flat. And to my horror, when I read the meter, it said that I had less than, I think it was about £2.88 of electricity. Yes. So what had happened was that whilst the flat was vacant, there built up standing charges and other, I don't know how, but just pay as you go, but it built up debt of, I believe it was £27.27. So basically, I was paying for Sanctuary Housing's debt, because obviously the flat was empty for a considerable amount of time, because obviously when a tenant moves out, a new tenant comes in, they, I don't know why, but they rip the place to shreds, is basically, and this flat was filthy dirty. But that's the type of people that Sanctuary Housing are. And I had to argue and argue and argue before eventually Kai Heap returned, maybe, well, it was the following year actually. So you're talking nearly 12 months later that I got reimbursed the £27.27 that I paid. Shocking, absolutely shocking. But that's the way Sanctuary Housing operate, or certainly did back in 2008. There was another incident, I'll call it an incident, well, the fact that there is a communal television area on the roof, and I was not connected. My flat had no connection whatsoever to that flat, to that aerial. So an appointment was arranged, and I always remember the name of a gentleman. I never met him once, a Mr. Dixon. And the reason I remember the name is because those of you who are of my generation would know that in the 80s and 70s there was a electrical store that sold TVs, the video recorders, hi-fis, called Dixon's. I think they merged with Curry's, I believe. That's how I remember the name, Mr. Dixon. He was supposed to be an expert on television errors. So he came and saw, and then I will say pretty speedily, cable was put into my flat. In fact, I'll just show you. If you have a look where you can see the ceiling. If you look there, you can see just under the ceiling there's a box, and the cable's inside that box to the television area. Even though I'm not connected to the television, I don't have a television now. So I was connected to the television area, so that was fine. But whilst Mr. Dixon was here, I mentioned to him about my door to my bathroom. It wouldn't shut, it wouldn't close. And what Mr. Dixon did was, he said, that's fine. He said, I'll ring the sanctuary repairs team and get them to come out and obviously fix your door. It wouldn't shut. So, Mr. Dixon, we were in the lounge, where I am now, the very same lounge, and Mr. Dixon went out into the hallway and he phoned sanctuary repairs and reported that this door needed obviously to be fixed, so it was closed. And he came back then into the lounge and said everything was, arranged, and I'll hear shortly with a date. Gave him my email address. I'll hear shortly with a date confirming when Sanctuary will be coming out to fix my bathroom door. Having heard nothing for several months, I then inquired, because one, the door hadn't been fixed, and two, I was suspicious of Mr. Dixon. Now, when I rang with Sanctuary Repairs, they had no record of that conversation. They had no contact with Mr. Dixon, and I believe them. And the reason I believe them, and people who have mobile phones and who live in, we'll say, modern blocks of flats. This flat was built, these block of flats, this building actually used to be a hotel, the Charlton Hotel, or a Charlton House Hotel it was called. So it used to be a hotel before it was converted in, I believe it was 1996, it was converted into 30 flats. That's when it became flats. Now, modern day, in blocks of flats, they'll use a lot of aluminium as frames. And what happens is that mobile phones, if you don't have a router, which frankly I do now, so if you're not connected to the internet via broadband, mobile phones won't work inside most flats, in a block of flats, because the signal bounces, the aluminium affects the signal. So literally what you have to do, and I had to do this before I got broadband, it was about 3 or 4 years before I got broadband, I had to do this. Literally you've got to go to your, in my case, lounge window, and literally your head, your top half of your body will be hanging out your lounge window whilst you made a phone call. It was very annoying because if you received a phone call, within seconds, maybe a minute at most, it would be terminated because the signal would fail, and it was a real pain in the ass. So that begs the question: how the hell was Mr. Dixon able to make this alleged phone call? Obviously, he didn't. He lied. So that was in 2008. We're now in 2026. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. So sanctuary operatives were lying way back in 2008 and were lying way back nearly 18 years later in 2026. It's truly shocking. But I'm afraid, this is the fact of life. Many people talk about broken Britain, and Britain truly is broken. It's rotten to the core. And I think that for all his many, many faults and failures, one positive thing, in my opinion, that Boris Johnson, the then Prime Minister at the time, said was, following COVID, once COVID had finished, he urged people, because obviously we had, was it 2 lockdowns, I believe? The first lockdown I know began in March of 2020, and millions of people were furloughed. So, stay at home. Only essential shops were allowed to open, food shops, etc. And he's obviously, people were continuing work but working from home. And now, sadly, and Boris Johnson said, this was a major problem, because what it does is people today, even sanctuary, and this is not having a go at sanctuary, this is just a fact that sometimes when you ring the sanctuary main line, inquiry line, you get through to someone and you hear talking, or you hear a dog barking in the background, and you ask, are you speaking to me from home? And they'll often, say yes, and I say, well, I'm not prepared to talk to someone at home, and I terminate the call. And this, to say, it's not aimed at sanctuary, but specifically all businesses, particularly larger businesses. This working from home policy is what is ruining the high street. Because if you think about it, you got a major factory in a city, employs let's say 300 staff. It's like a call centre. It employs 300 staff, and if they're working from home, they're not on my lunch break going into the city centre or the town centre. They're not going into the local convenience store, into the local cafe to buy a sandwich for lunch or whatever. And so that's why you're seeing, virtually, certainly it's true in Devon, Torquay, a prime example, it's literally every other shop is closed, boarded up, shut. The high street is, if it's not dead, certainly is dying. And I believe this working from home culture is largely responsible, or has a huge part to play, in the amount of places since COVID and lockdown. So there we have part 2 of the video. I hope you'll be glad to know it's about 20 minutes shorter than part 1. But I felt it important to conclude the story. So, like I said before, I make no apologies for the quality of the video. It's me holding a tablet against my laptop. This letter is, as you can see, propped up by my laptop. So I feel I'm no filmmaker, no video maker. I don't have the equipment. I don't even own a camera apart from what's on my, smartphone and my tablets. But I firmly am a believer it's about the message I'm trying to get across, rather than the quality of the video itself. It's the message contained within the video. So thank you very much again for watching, and please feel free to leave any comments in the comment section down below, and thank you for watching the video.